Well, thanks so much for organizing this, City, and thanks for including me in this project once it was started. Right now, I'm very nervous because I didn't prepare like a formal presentation, and I heard you talking, Blanca, with a very organized discourse and a very organized narrative. And I hear Rafa, and he's got this wonderful PowerPoint, and I just have like some ideas and intuitions and things that I have been thinking. And I guess I'm just going to say that since I'm late, because I just got into the project, I am going to exploit that and indulgent with myself. So I know that in my title I had something about whales and how this is important, heteronormativity, whales, and citizenship, and how this is important. And hearing you, listening to both of you, I see that many of the things that for me were like ideas and intuitions and things that I have worked previously in other projects but never came to the front line are actually well connected, and you already brought some of the ideas. My starting point was a reading of Linda Nicholson, in quite a while, because this was translated in 2003, so I guess her text is prior to that, much prior to that. She says that to conceive humanity as divided in two, men and women, is a rather new phenomenon in the West, right? And you have been discussing about this. Blanca talked about it. And that in the 17th and, in the 18th and 19th century in Europe, the idea that matter and physical features of human existence bared or showed the nature of the being that they contained was very much developed, right? So this materialist philosophy is something that became important in the 18th and 19th. And here's where we start to think in those, in the sexual difference as a category, right? As a philosophical category, if you like. And this idea developed, or was that this idea that the being was in the matter, in the body, had like two strands. A profound consciousness, or a profound belief that the body tells us who the being is, right? So who we are, and that we can know through the body what being is contained in that matter, right? And the second idea was this absolute certainty that the body and that the being determines one's perception of the world, right? So the centrality of the body, and this idea that the body was so fundamental for understanding humanity, actually helped the philosophers and los médicos filósofos, the doctors and philosophers in the Enlightenment. The body helped for explaining basic social distinctions, such as sexism, actually explained systems of power, right? Helped us explain systems of power and privileges and subordination. So sexism, racism, heteronormativity, capitalism, and the like, right? So this materialist philosophy re-elaborated and explained social differences and inequalities by relying on the body, and the nature of bodies was like the explanation, right? So modernity is at the origin of this split, of this sexual differences split, but also of other meaningful social categories that separate or that divide human beings into categories, into social categories. So sexed bodies and racialized bodies were theorized and constructed with, and were given social functions, social positions, and that were clearly separated. And this was because there was this need of the economic political project of modernity, right? So this precise elaboration of the sexual difference was necessary to define modern citizenship. And this is something that we can read from Pateman to, you know, to the latest theories. This idea that, or political theories, sorry, that women were trapped in our bodies. We were trapped in our bodies, and therefore we could not be thought of as autonomous individuals, autonomous beings. We are still not fully conceived of autonomous because of our bodies and in relation to our bodies. And therefore we could not sign a contract that would be payment, right? The sexual contract that excluded us from the social contract was justified because of our body, right? So the organization of citizenship from modernity relies on this division, on this sexual division. We have a sexed citizenship that is operated through the private-public divide that reproduces, for instance, the ancient Greece model, and with the subordination of the private to be functional for the public to work. So these two spheres are inhabited by different humans, right? With different human kinds or human beings, and cover or develop different functions. They have a different status, both the spheres and the people that inhabit them. They have different considerations, the things that happen in each domain, and they have different logics, right? But both the spheres are intertwined, and one necessarily relies on the other one, right? So with this, which would be like, well, it's a bit like a caricature, but with this oversimplification of what modern citizenship means or how it is, with this idea of the public freedoms and rights and the private being, being there for it, right? The heterosexual monogamous family just fits perfectly for the project, fits perfectly for this economic and social system. And of course, this does not happen in the 18th or 19th. I mean, this is like a long, I'm just making this whole squash, right? I'm squishing everything to have like a coherent narrative as if it was linear, when we know it wasn't. But I'm just like trying to like summarize and bring like the lines. But this heterosexual monogamous family fits perfectly into the economic, social, and political project of modernity and capitalism, of course. So daddy works and is the breadwinner. Mommy cares for all of us at home. Is the caregiver, the angel of the house. And children just grow up happily. So in the system, workers and future workers are taken care of at a very low cost for capitalism and with very little rights for those who care for those workers and future workers. So capitalism benefits somehow, or can also use and maybe even requires this divide, and stresses it with what is productive and reproductive, what counts as economy and what does not count as economic. And therefore, this modernity, this materialism, capitalism, modernity, and heteronormativity just puts all the pieces together to have the puzzle. And all these can work if we can sustain this binary code of men and women, each one in one sphere, each one with one clear role, with one clear social position, with, you know, assigned rights and duties. And this is well organized through this heteronormativity, right? Through this heterosexual monogamous family that perfectly, you know, just links everything together, just puts everything together. So this binary sexual code, so we only have men and women, and all the diversity is reduced, all that complexity of forms of being is reduced to just two types. This binary sexual code and the fact that heterosexuality becomes the norm, becomes normative, becomes normal, is actually functional to modernity, to capitalism, and to citizenship as we know it, if you like. These sex bodies are placed in different spheres and locuses. They have different roles, they have different status, they have different rights and freedoms, but we are told that we are equal, right? That citizenship is universal, that citizenship is for all, and that being a citizen is actually to be equal and to be equally autonomous individuals, right? So this fiction and this narrative kind of holds the thing together, right? Glues everything together. And I think formal equality is a device that has reproduced power relations, and by focusing just on individual rights, and I think many excluded, and maybe this connects with Rafa and intersectionality and how we think about equality and how we need to think of the subject. Many excluded groups actually claim that that very model of equality does not accommodate the demands that they have for social justice, right? So anyway, all this to say that this device, the public and private, and the heteronormativity and the formal equality, this, in a way, it constructs gender, right? So how can we think of gender? So here I'm jumping, this would be like my second block of ideas. Of course, gender, and Rafa has also talked about it and how to approach, and gender as a category of analysis, I think it's interesting from different perspectives and from different conceptions, because we have now different conceptions about what gender means. And I like to think of it as the site for power relations. But Nicholson, as Nicholson explains, we usually use the term gender in two different ways. So there are two main ways of using gender, of using the term gender. The first one is that one that separates, or that relies on this separation between culture and nature, between what's given and what is constructed, right? Or between the biological aspects, that would be sex, and the cultural and social constructed elements, that would be gender. And in this meaning, gender and sex are two different things that relate to one another and are complement one another. Whereas in the second use of the term, gender is a social construction that relates to biological difference as such. So the assignment of roles and behaviors relying on that difference is part of it. The discourses that justify power relations is part of it, but also gender in this second meaning designates the fact that society shapes behavior and aspects and how we see each other, the relation that we have with our body, and how we see the human body itself. So the body and the very difference between the two sexes appears as a social construction. And sexual difference is actually part of gender, right? It's not complementary anymore. It is inside, because the very separation of humankind in two is a device for gender, is a way of making gender. And in this second meaning, this distinction disappears, right? The existence of the distinction between cultural and natural disappears, because why do we talk of 2 sexes and not 5 and not 10? We are saying that the existence of 2 and not 5, 10, or none is itself social, right? Because it is itself a social construction. Because categories of men and women do not exist without the theories that explain them. And if this is so, sex is inside gender, right? And this is why I talk about whales when I explain this to my students. And I say that categories and classifications are never possible without a theory that explains them, right? If there are 2 sexes and not 3, 5, 7, 9, 0, whatever, we need a theory that says that the distinction is necessary. What are the criteria we're going to use to make the distinction? Why do we need the distinction? And we need to interpret data, to choose the data to be used, to say what we're going to disregard. And this was also in Blanca's part, in what Blanca was talking. So classifications, and human classifications and social classifications are never descriptive. If I say a whale is a mammal, I'm describing whales within a framework, within a theoretical framework, according to which reproduction is the most important characteristic of animal, of animal and difference amongst vertebrates. But I need that theory before I can describe a whale as being a mammal. So if there are 2 natural sexes, it's because some theory says that there's only 2 ways of being, there's only 2 ways of inhabiting humanity. And that theory says that these are determined by nature and that the most important data is morphologic, right? So now I think, so, and this is pretty much still in our way of thinking. And then feminism came and said biology is not destiny, right? So we don't have to look at matter. We don't have to look at the body. We don't care that much, because we can become who we want to become, or because, because we are not born women, we become women, right? So there is a process there to be done. Biology is not destiny. However, so we are there, and right now, I think right now, and this is an idea that Siobhan Guerrero has developed, and if you don't know her, I just love her and love her videos, and you should just look for her in YouTube. Siobhan Guerrero, she's a philosopher, Mexican philosopher, And she does wonderful classes like this through YouTube. And I think she's just wonderful. And she says, right now, this material, this matter is now in dispute, right? This idea of the materiality of the categories is being under dispute. And she points out at 4 angles that I think are very interesting and are also now reshaping, or are debates that are very important for defining citizenship. The first one, so matter, this idea that matter, the body determines who we are, is being used by those who oppose feminism and the advance of LGBT and women's rights by saying, you know, by accusing everything of gender ideology, right? And saying you cannot change who you are, right? There are men and women, this is nature, and this is absolutely necessary for the family, and you are confusing children if you tell them otherwise. So this is being questioned and re-elaborated, and we speak about matter again and about biology again from this strand, right, from this attack. Then we have some feminists that are trans-exclusionary, that rely again on the sexual difference and on the nature of things to articulate a discourse to exclude the possibility of enlarging the political subject of feminism. And they say that the sexual difference is what it's important per se, and is fundamental, right? That cannot be changed or shaken or transformed. The third one, the third line of discussion, or the third, the third area where matter appears again as a site for discussion is in medicine and in biomedical sciences, that continue to look for genetic or medical or biological basis for sexual identity, for sexual orientation, and so on, right? They are still looking to how to link this, how to link who we are, right? And the choices we make and the political subjects that we are to what the nature and body and the biology is showing. And the fourth one is, and is linked to this one, is the pathology of some bodies that are not what they should be, right? So trans people or intersex people, it's like there's something that they are pathologized because they are not how they should be. They should be either, you know, a boy or a girl, and that's it. And they should not move from there. And so all the non-binary and everything that does not fit in those 2 clear categories is being questioned. So all this that is now being under dispute, and from those different axes, I think is very interesting, because at the end, and this is where I'm going to focus, I think, eventually. I only need 2 more minutes. I think, well, this was the construction modernity needed. This was the construction that a particular economic, social, and political system required. And it has been very, you know, and it has lasted long, and it has been challenged from many sides and from many places, but it has kind of made its role, right? It played well, it lasted, and it had a function. But is this really what we need now? How do we need to transform this? what is it that needs to be changed? What is the project? What is the political project that we are aiming at when we are challenging all this? And I think this is, I think that to decide that, I first need to really understand how those like stages are connected, and how all those pieces of the puzzle that I was telling you are really connected, and to see how moving the different pieces can actually transforms the project, the political project itself. I don't know if that was clear enough, but I think that's my idea.